Hello and good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope you all had an amazing day. Thank you to those that are joining us again. Thank you to the new people that have decided to join us this morning. We are excited to have you. Welcome to day 2 of the Executive Mindset, a LinkedIn Live series conversation. My name is Ashley Watterson, and I am an organizational development consultant, an executive coach, and your moderator for this conversation series. This session is presented by Accelerate, a pre-executive coaching cohort designed for leaders to equip you with the knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits needed for executive leadership. Yesterday, we had an amazing conversation, a powerful conversation with Ben Lundquist, where we talked about the reflective mind, really about the importance of self-awareness. We talked about how self-awareness is key to going the long distance within your leadership development. It's something that will never stop, no matter if you're a frontline manager right now, all the way up to the executive level. It's something that we encourage everyone to integrate into their regular life, into their regular day, to make sure that they're really in touch with what's going on in their life, what's going well, maybe what's not going well. And then on top of that, we talked about we need different sages at different stages to support our development. So throughout our life, we may go through different things. We may need different sources of support, new mentors. So we encourage you to find an expanding group of mentors, even if they don't know it. We mentioned that yesterday. Even if they don't know they're a mentor, they might still be a mentor. Today, we'll be talking about the relational mind, where we are discussing the influence that you can have on your team, the importance of not just managing your team, but leading your team. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the strategic mind. This is that enterprise thinking where you are expanding your ability to think more systematically, set direction, and drive the impact across your teams and organizations. We shared also yesterday that if you're interested in learning a little bit more, if you have that executive mindset, if you're ready to take it to the next level, we encourage you to take our executive mindset assessment. It's a great tool to understand, again, where are you? Where are your strengths? Where are your gaps? Where can you grow? It only takes a couple of minutes. So we just dropped that. You see that on the screen, but we'll also drop that in the chat. Now, again, we'll be doing a deep dive today into the relational mindset. So why does this matter? Why is this so critical to the executive role? So even the visionary leaders can't stand alone. It's the ability to have influence. It's the ability to coach your team, to create a high trust environment and a high trust culture where your team can come to you. They can they can come to each other to support the organization and whatever the goals that you have set forth. So this morning, I'm excited to have a conversation with the amazing Pierre Quinn, who is a leadership strategist, an executive coach, and an author. Pierre is passionate about helping leaders lead authentically, communicate powerfully, and build high-performing teams. Good morning, Pierre. Welcome.
Ashley, good morning. Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing amazing. I'm so excited to talk to you today. We started talking a little bit yesterday about the relational mindset, and I had to put us on pause so we can have this really powerful conversation today. So Pierre, I'm just going to, again, jump right in. When we say the relational mindset, what exactly are we talking about? And why is it so critical for those preparing to enter into executive roles?
So, our conversation yesterday, the reflective mind, is really about how we lead ourselves. Our conversation tomorrow, the strategic mind, is all about how we lead the business or the organization. Today's conversation, the relational mind, is all about how we lead teams or groups of people. And you set us up for that perfectly. When we look at executive presence, when we look at influence, when we look at team building, when we look at emotional intelligence, these are all the factors that go into this relational mind idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. So obviously all of this is going to be connected. So let's jump into the next question, which is, what is emotional contagion and how does that impact leadership?
There's this movie that came out several years ago called Contagion with Matt Damon. And the movie was all about how a disease was transmitted from one person to another. A very deadly disease was transmitted from one person to another from close contact. And we were watching in the movie, you watch this storyline of how that disease is communicated, how it travels from one side of the world to another, really leaving devastation in its wake. So when we talk about emotional contagion is the transfer of emotions from one person to another, both consciously and subconsciously. And as leaders, we have to realize that when you walk into a room, and not to get too much into executive presence yet, but when you walk into a room, the attitude and temperature in which you walk into a room generally dictates how people will respond in that room.
Mm-hmm.
For example, say you got a bad email. You're having a crappy day. You don't like some news that the rest of your leadership team, your executive leadership team has made, and you wear that visibly on you. Your disposition is sour.
Yeah.
And then you walk into a meeting with people who directly report to you, and maybe they're excited to be there. Maybe they're excited. Maybe it's Monday and they're thinking about how the weekend was great, or they just got back from vacation, or things are going well. But your sour attitude is now contagious, and maybe a lighthearted or energetic atmosphere that was there in the beginning now has dramatically changed because people have caught, like a virus, the disposition in which you walk, in which you carried into the room. And I think as leaders, we need to be mindful that our emotions, our behavioral preferences are contagious, and they impact not just how we lead our teams, but also how we lead ourselves, and ultimately how we lead the business.
Oh yeah, I know what that feels like. I've been in meetings where my supervisors walked in, and like I said, I can feel it. I can immediately feel it. It definitely sets the tone. So I'm sure some of our viewers also resonate with that. And to connect it back to the reflective mindset, maybe those are moments where we can take a moment, think about what's going on, think about what's not happening in that moment where we need to step into a new space and bring in new energy. So again, incorporating that daily reflection, even if it's when you got that email and you're getting into a new space, take a break and say, what am I bringing into this new environment that I'm in? Yeah, definitely understand that. Oh, Pierre, you still with us? All right, I think we might have lost Pierre for a second. And there's Seth.
We're here. Yeah, he may have some internet issues. I know he's traveling right now, so I will pitch hit, and we can keep the conversation going until he gets back on.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great. So the next question, and well, let me take a moment to allow Seth to reintroduce himself
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
morning.
So excited to be here. Seth Yolorda, one of the four horsemen, five horsemen, with Ashley, Kevin, and Ben, and Pierre, and myself. And excited to dive in and continue the conversation around relational mind, how we lead others, how we create teams that really want to gel together and come together and can really experience high levels of performance. Right. So that's what this relational mind is all about.
Yeah. And you have a lot of, oh, there he is. Welcome back, Pierre, to the building.
That's the thing about even this relational mind, right? How do you respond as a leader when things don't go according to plan?
Mhm.
Yep.
So I knew when it went out, I said, I know I'm going to get back online, but how am I going to respond when I get back online? Am I just going to be irritated and angry or frustrated, or am I going to come into it and say, okay, it clicked off, we're back here. How can we take advantage of the time that we have left, and just really just do the job that's in front of us? So yeah, it has to happen. It's a perfect object lesson, right?
Yep. We got to master the pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I don't know if you caught what I was saying, Pierre, but essentially connecting it back to the reflective mind, taking that moment before you enter into new spaces is really important. Maybe it's not daily, like you're blocking that time, 30 minutes. Sometimes you have to do it in the moment as well. So great.
Yeah. It's I love the pivot. What happens is we plan amazingly. Even going back to episode 1, where flowed well, no technical difficulties. It was really, really smooth. And how many times is it, especially at that more senior, that executive level, where people come to you with an interruption or a disruption, that perfect Gantt chart, that great strategic plan that maybe you had Seth work out for you, now you have a wrinkle in that plan, and that ability to just, okay, let me test the connections of the people in the room, get us all back on the same page emotionally, and move forward. Sometimes there's not always a chance to prep for it. You just have to do it in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, next, thinking about the influence that you can have over people, what
Mhm.
do influential, relationally intelligent leaders do differently from those that are not thinking about that relational mindset that we're talking about?
So when we look at emotional intelligence, especially Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence, a lot of times we get stuck in those first two quadrants or first part of the framework, where it is that self-awareness piece that we look at, that is asking us to really name and label how we feel. That's the self-awareness. Then the self-management is, what's the appropriate response to how I feel. Those are the first two sections of it.
Mm.
The other parts are asking, okay, so how do the people around me feel? That emotionally intelligent, that relationally intelligent leader is asking, how are the people around me feeling? And then how are they responding to what's going on around them? And being able to track how my influence in that moment, especially in moments where it's cyclical, because some of us are a part of organizations where things happen at the same time every year.
Mm-hmm.
The fall is always crunch time because we're trying to get things in before the end of the year. Maybe our fiscal year ends June 30. So there's always this rush to make sure we're allocating resources.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have these cyclical occurrences in our year, as a more senior leader, I can, one, first clearly track where are the ups and downs of the people in my organization. Two, how can I temper my responses to those ups and downs that happen cyclically? And then three, what are the connections that I'm making? Because you recognize, as a leader, it's not just about me getting the work or the project done that's on my individual list.
Mm-hmm.
It's in many ways fostering this sense of cross-functional relationships or cross-organizational relationships. And the leader that leverages those competencies realizes, okay, I'm not just in it for me. I'm not just in it for my people. I'm in it for, in networking, we call it a boundary spanner. How can I connect differing groups of people so that we all win and that we all accomplish our goals? A leader that that cannot, to use Seth's word from yesterday, that cannot leverage that or is blinded to that, is only thinking about that first section of how they feel and how they respond, and not the greater picture, which enterprise thinking tells us that
Mm.
we're not just doing this single thing. It has widespread impact, and we need to be conscious of that impact as we're making decisions.
Right, right. And Kevin talked about yesterday too, the importance of, your team and how, we essentially can't get the work done without each other. And to really pay attention to and to have that kind of individualized consideration for people in different seasons. We know that in the early fall, maybe parents are going back to school, the kids are going back to school and people are navigating, new systems and processes for their own within their home. And the reality is we bring our home lives to work, even though we try not to, it does happen. So, thinking about that whole cycle of life within the organization and within people's lives, I think is really important if you really want to be an effective leader, where you can build that trust, that people know that you care about them as well.
That's so important. As trust people, knowing that you care. One of the things that I picked up from teaching, and even some of the courses that we do with adult learners, is I often spend the first few moments of the course asking people generally what's on their mind.
Mm.
What are you thinking about? What are, sometimes I frame the question, what could compete for your time and attention during the 1 hour or half day or even 9 months that we're together? What can compete for your time and attention? And how can we set up an environment that will allow you to give time and attention to what we're doing in our time together, while not discounting all the other things in your life's ecosystem that you have to pay attention to? And there's just a little bit of psychology there. People are more likely to respond to what you're looking to share and what you are looking to nudge them in that direction
Mhm.
toward, if you've given them just a few moments to consider what's on their mind and what's competing for their time and attention. Broader in an organizational context, and not to get too much into what we're going to talk about tomorrow as it relates to decision making, but you've been there before, Ashley, right? You've been there. A lot of us have been there. Our viewers live or the replay have been there, where a leader who has not built trust, who has not built a sense of camaraderie or cohesion says, hey, this is the thing we're going to do. And we all nod because the org chart says we have to nod.
Mm-hmm.
But then we don't walk away from that meeting or from that Zoom call or from that Teams call with enthusiasm. Sometimes we don't walk away with it from that exchange with intent because we don't trust the person. They haven't connected to what our drivers, our motivators are. They don't have that widespread leadership or executive presence. So I'm not necessarily compelled. Maybe their directive falls 3 or 4 down, and I'll get to it after a couple of emails or a couple of exchanges or a couple of other things. Versus a leader that has built that resonance, built that trust, has aligned my personal sense of purpose and direction with the organization's purpose and direction, pointing us all in going the same way, and we're connected in that way. I'm sometimes willing to run through a brick wall or go through extenuating circumstances because of the rapport that leader has built. And we've seen great ideas fall flat because the idea was fantastic, but the environment for cultivating that idea and the relationships were not there to carry that idea forward.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about trust. So I have so many thoughts going through my brain, but how does trust, team trust, influence your ability to lead that change and to execute that strategy? I mean, you kind of started talking about it, but especially now, I think we know that trust is important within organizations. It influences people's job satisfaction. It influences if they have that commitment to the organization, and obviously if they have a commitment to their leader. And we know that people don't always leave for the money, right? People leave because they have ineffective leaders who are not, setting the tone in the way that resonates with the values that they have, as you suggested. So again, how does team trust influence your ability to lead change and execute strategy when we know that we're in this constantly changing and rapid environment?
A lot of HR research tells us that money in many factors is the last thing that people are asking for. It's that last sort of vestige of an indicator that I matter to this organization. So people look for growth opportunities.
Yep.
They look for learning and development opportunities, like the things that we do with Accelerate. They look for a sense of community, a sense of purpose.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, if I can't get any of those things, at least I'm going to try to get a raise out of this thing. And at the point where they're asking for that raise, they're usually trying to head off in a different direction.
Right.
Because that trust factor, things really only happen at the speed of trust. I think Covey wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And it's this idea that we can only go as fast, we can only do as much as we are willing to trust each other. We can only go as fast and we can only do as much as we are willing to trust each other. We can pull all types of sports analogies into this conversation. We can pull all types of manufacturing, frontline manufacturing analogies into this conversation. But I'm a foodie.
All right.
So here's one of the examples that I have. For anybody who's ever been to Chipotle, the process at Chipotle only happens as fast as I can trust the person making my burrito. It only happens that fast. So the first, when you walk into it, okay, you want a bowl, you want a burrito, what do you want? What do you want? And I typically get a burrito. And then they ask you, okay, you want what rice? You want brown rice or white rice? Mm-hmm. Now, listen, I am 5'10", like I'm an adult. Please do not put a child-sized scoop of rice and beans in my burrito. And now I'm holding up the line because I'm asking you, hey, can you put a little bit more of this? Can you put a little bit more of that? Can you put a little bit more of this? Well, here's the thing. I go to a Chipotle around the corner from my house fairly often. because it's just there. It's just convenient. And depending on the team, Steph was at Chipotle yesterday. I was I was there yesterday and the day before, so don't hold it against me. There's a staff at Chipotle that knows me. They know me. They know my order. They know my cadence. They know my scoop size. So at that point, when I walk into Chipotle, they've already started. There's only a few
Wow.
times where I'm like, okay, I don't want a burrito today, but they've already started. They meet me halfway. Because they know we've built up that trust over months. To now, the process goes really, really quickly because I've been so clear in what I'm looking for, and they've been so clear in their responses that we've built up this synergy. When we think about our organizations, where as senior leaders are we both not clear on the instructions, also not clear on the dynamics of the relationships we need to have with the people that we're giving instructions? Because for the people at Chipotle, Ashley, I don't just walk in and with a kind of gruff look on my face. One, because I've always heard you need to be twice as nice to the people who are preparing your food for whatever reason. But I walk in there and I'm excited to see them. Hey, good to see you today.
Yeah.
I know a couple of their names. I call them by name. I ask them, hey, have you just gotten to your shift, or are you leaving your shift? I'm building this sense of rapport. Why am I building the rapport? Because we're actually making this burrito together. This is a team effort, and I want it to go extremely, extremely well. So it can't just be about my instructions. It can't just be about my outcomes. It's also about the relationship, the dynamic. That 30-second, that 60-second conversation goes an extremely long way. And most of the time, I am quite happy with what is produced, but that only comes after. Relational mindset takes, just like reflective mindset, it takes time to build that trust and rapport so that you can get to the outcome that we're looking for. I know our organizations are extremely more complicated than Chipotle burritos, depending on your order, but the sentiment rings true. It's not just having all the right ingredients. It's not just having all the people at the right stations. It's also the relationship between both of those individuals and the individuals that they're looking to serve and connect with. And as a senior leader, as an executive leader, and many times I'm the orchestrator of that process. So how I treat them in that environment makes all the difference, and it directly impacts the outcome. And I hope I didn't make too many people hungry with that analogy.
Well, I mean, it's still a little early for me, but I love me some Chipotle. So one last question, because I'd like to invite the others to join us. But the reality is sometimes trust is lost.
Mhm.
And it could be because of something that the leader did. There could be external things that are happening. We need to keep into context of what's happening. But how do you rebuild trust and rebuild influence after a misstep or breakdown in that trust?
First, you got to own it.
Mm.
That as human beings who don't like embarrassment, who don't like, back in the day we call it bad press, now we call it bad social media responses. Nobody wants to be gathered or dragged or whatever the cool kids say when people are just tearing you apart on the internet. Nobody wants that. However, as a senior leader, you have to own it. You've got to own when you drop the ball, when you've made a mistake. Even something as having clear conversation with a person, maybe offline or maybe a separate meeting apart from the team, and then you get into the meeting and you don't clearly articulate, or you don't defend, or you don't offer up all the things that you said that you promised to do in that conversation that was offline. You got to own it. I messed up. I made a mistake. Own it, apologize, and really sit into getting away from deflecting, because that's what happens. I want to put the weight of that on somebody else.
Yeah.
So if it's on you, you got to own it. That's me. I admit that I did this wrong, and I want to apologize for that.
Yeah.
2, recognize that just because you own it and you apologize for it doesn't mean that the person who felt like the trust has been broken is going to instantly come to you with a high five, a handshake, a fist bump, a side hug, and say, hey, it's okay. Let's get back on the bike and let's try this thing again.
Mhm.
That now, in many ways, not all the time, depending on the depth of the relationship, but in many ways, you have reset the trust clock. So the same connected to the same time element that it took you to regain that trust, it in some cases may take the same time, duration, or even longer to regain that trust. And being okay with asking, especially in the dynamics of the team, how can we how can we rebuild our sense of trust or teamwork or camaraderie? What are the things really connected to the reflective mind that we were talking about yesterday?
Mhm.
Okay, this is the thing that's wrong, and how can I regain your trust? How can I help to rebuild what we had, or how can we navigate it in a different way? Before we get into maybe in-depth strategies and tactics and frameworks around it, those first couple of pieces of first owning it, that's really big.
Yeah.
People people start to treat you differently if you own up to the mistake, to if you don't rush them into trying to get into a good feeling again and saying, oh, well, at least I apologize. Can we just move on? No, trust has been broken. And then three, asking. We make a lot of assumptions in life. We don't
Mm.
define expectations. And asking,
Yeah.
Ashley, our trust has been broken. Again, I apologize for my mistake, or for not defending you, or for not giving you the opportunity that we talked about before.
Mm.
How can we rebuild our sense of connection? What are some of the things that you suggest that I can do to
Mm.
regain your belief and your support in me as your leader, and
Mm.
lean into that uncomfortable conversation? Definitely uncomfortable, but it's much needed.
Ah, we are scratching the surface. I'm like, there, we can have a whole conversation about this. That definitely, thank you for that. I'm sure people have experienced this and resonate with that. And I'd like to, remind people that if you're thinking, I have this relational mindset, I'm doing all these things that Pierre is talking about, and maybe you already do, but maybe you're thinking, maybe I could be doing better, at this relational mindset, that that we've been talking about. So I encourage you to take a moment to take leadership executive readiness assessment to see where you are, on the range of ways that you can do better, things that you need to improve on, but things maybe that you're doing already exceptionally well. So I encourage you to take that. Again, it only takes less than 3 minutes. But now I'd like to invite in our other guests to share some reflections. I know I have, again, a ton of things going through my mind, but to share their reflections with us. So we're going to invite again Seth back. Thank you for helping out in that moment, Seth,
Oh
Kevin,
yeah.
and Ben. So welcome.
Hey, welcome,
Hey,
welcome.
welcome.
How you doing?
Amazing. Great to
Good.
see you all again.
Such a great conversation so far.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with you, Seth. What's resonating with you? What reflections do you have based on this conversation?
I mean, Chipotle. I'm hungry, and it's 7:30.
That's what
I
I
had.
was. That's what I was thinking too.
I may or may not have had Chipotle for dinner last night. I might have it again today. I know my order is 19.35 every time. That's how much it costs. But I mean, what you were saying is so true. Stephen Covey, Speed of Trust,
Mm.
and he basically says that if there is a violation of trust, it's because there's a deficit of character or a deficit of competence, right? So, people don't trust you because you don't do what you say you're going to do, or they don't believe that you have the ability, right?
Yep.
There's a competence thing there. And so as leaders, Patrick Lencioni also, leans heavily into this model that, the way that you restore dysfunction, if there is dysfunction on your team, is to establish trust, right? A trustworthiness culture. And that's what we're ultimately talking about, really, is culture, right? It's what people experience when they come together. And Pierre, you just brought out so many good points as far as like how to restore trust, being willing to fall on the sword, right? As leaders, right? You need to be willing to fall on the sword, and be willing to take one for the team, right? If I have to apologize, if I need to acknowledge, things I don't know, or things that mistakes I may have made, in order to make sure that there is a culture. And that's, let me just say, that's also when you're willing to fall on the sword and apologize and to make amends, it's really about creating psychological safety, right? It's really about creating an environment where people feel like, oh, it's okay to make a mistake, because if we make a mistake, we'll own it, we'll learn from it, right? And then we'll grow beyond it, right?
Yeah.
And that's that psychological safety, which we know is so critical to building high performance, extraordinary cultures and extraordinary teams. So yeah, so much content, so much value. So thank you, Pierre, for teeing it up for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kevin, what are you thinking?
Man, I don't know about you guys, but I'm stuck on that resetting the trust clock.
Yep.
Man,
Yep.
when you said that, Pierre, that resonated so well with me. You know, I think trust as an objective, right? When you talk about the relational mind and working with people, trust has to be an objective of you as a leader. And I heard that themed through everything you said, Pierre. And I just want to reiterate it because of how important it is. And some of the components of trust as an objective is not just time. Time is a piece of it. Not everyone is as free with their trust. Some people give it up early, and some people you have to really fight for it. But it's also truth, man. And I heard you say that a couple times. And truth being a component of trust and is a really powerful connection. So as a leader stepping into a space, making trust an objective and ensuring that truth, transparency is really a part. And I have to connect the relational mind back to the reflective mind a bit. You have to have, as a leader, I think, a very strong self-awareness, like we talked about yesterday. You have to have a very strong sense of self. You have to find ways to balance and quiet the voices in your mind. Before you really start out on a quest to build trust with people. It's really important. These things I don't think you work on individually. I think you got to keep on building in each one of these mindsets to kind of keep you moving and leveling up. But man, that connection in making trust an objective as a leader and ensuring that truth is a part of that with the individual. And I think you said that, Ashley, and it's a great carve out. I think with the individual, I think it's just a powerful thing, man. You actually had me. I don't know if you saw me, but I scribbled that down on the board here in the office. It's a powerful thing, man. I love that. Thanks, Pierre.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Hi, Ben.
Hey, good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you. What's standing out to you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it kind of blowing up in the chat. People making all these jokes about Chipotle, but the idea that you make a burrito with somebody else in a partnership, that really stuck out to me.
That's good.
And I just think the idea that everything you do within your team or organization, it is a partnership, and there's a relational component to every partnership of trust that's there, of respect that is there. But I think if you approach working with people as a partnership, I feel like it changes the entire dynamic of what you're able to build and do together. Even the idea of, I'm not leading you, we are leading together. We may have different roles, different responsibilities, but I am in a partnership with you and trying to really complement and work together. Something that came to my mind when it comes to the idea of apologizing, making mistakes. Sometimes we don't always hit home runs as leaders, or sometimes we have a foul ball moment. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that somebody gave me is sometimes you just have to make it awkward. And maybe somebody can put in the chat, make it awkward. And what I mean by that is just going to somebody and saying, hey, this is probably not going to come out the right way. I'm probably not going to choose the right words. I'm probably going to stumble around with what I'm really trying to say. So bear with me, but I just want to lean into this moment. And I think sometimes we can be so afraid of the awkward that we end up compromising the relational and those connections. And I think sometimes you just have to make it awkward. You got to be willing to go into that space, into that conversation, so you can have the opportunity to rebuild trust and connection with people. So, yeah, Pierre, I absolutely loved it. And I think you really laid down some gems for us this morning.
Yeah. And I think that really relates also to being, whether it's being vulnerable and just having that conversation, it's related to your authenticity too. I think people value authenticity, and to see that whether it's somebody owning something, they're coming to me and just being honest. Somebody, put trust, truth, is so critical. So being authentic in that moment, I think is critical. And it, ties back to the reflective mind. And I think we can't escape, although some people say, I'll bring your whole self to work. For some people, that they may not always feel like that works, but when you are authentic, research tells when you are authentic and true to yourself, your followers will do the same. So that will also help to build the trust. They will come to you when they've made a mistake and they will own up to it. So just putting that all together. So thank you.
But Ashley, let me just put you on the spot just for a minute, because I would love your perspective when it comes to relational mind. An element of building trust is cultural competency.
Yeah.
How are we as leaders culturally competent? There's diversity in the workplace. There's people from different ethnicities, different backgrounds.
Yeah.
How do leaders increase cultural competence? And I'm putting you on the spot because you've lived in multiple countries. You are the embodiment of multiple ethnicities, right? And your research, right, has been around cultural competence and multi-ethnic leadership. Mm-hmm. So how do leaders leverage? How are they aware of their own cultural competence, or maybe even cultural incompetence? And then how do they lean in to build teams that are culturally competent?
Yeah, I think one of the first, thank you for that, Seth. I think one of the first things is to have a heightened level of awareness that there are differences. Whether we all look the same, I promise you we're not. Right? We do have differences. We have a lot of similarities and a lot of things that we can, share we have these common experiences, but we all bring our different backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, the way we grew up, our family values are different. And that values also shift across cultures. And not only within cultures, let's not generalize, all cultures think the same way, different generations. So I think that heightened level of awareness, I think, is one of the first elements. I think another critical component is being curious and not being afraid to ask questions about how do they see it. And to not make assumptions. Perry talked about a lot of people make assumptions of what people are thinking, how they're interpreting, what's going on. Being curious, I think, is really going to help leaders take a step back and say, what are they seeing differently than me? What are they seeing differently than other people in the room? And on top of that, I think it's about, again, that individual kind of consideration, having those conversations and understanding that people want to have those conversations in different ways. So the more that you build trust with somebody, the more that you get to know them, the more they get to know you, you can start to better understand how to tailor your conversation and how to tailor the way that you're talking to and communicating with them, about, whatever's going on, whether you're building trust, you're resetting that trust clock, or you're continuing to cultivate that trust over time. So I think those are two critical elements.
Excellent. And if we want more, you do have a TED Talk where you talk about, right?
It's got a whole
leadership.
Oh, just a TED Talk. It's just
I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Casual.
Hey, somebody better drop that link in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now I know we've been having a lot of engagement throughout the comments. We appreciate that. If you have any questions that you would like answered, this is the time. Drop it in the chat right now. Let's see, Pierre, do we have any questions or that we need to address? Any comments that anybody wants to address?
I'll throw up a question.
Yeah.
There has never been a team I have worked with or worked on where communication was not a challenge.
Oh yeah.
Communication even the high trusting teams, there's always like, you said A, I heard B, right? Like you said up, I heard down. I'm just curious, Pierre, Ben, Kevin, how do we help leaders really align communication pathways, right? How do we help leaders really lock in communication rhythms so that we're no longer kind of running up against unnecessary communication barriers and pitfalls?
Man, if I can jump in on this for a hot second, because I think we may have to do an entire executive mindset on communication.
Yeah.
So first things first. Unfortunately, we are nurtured in the way we communicate. There not a lot of people are teaching you how to communicate. You're nurtured based off of your family, your community, the upbringing, and the connections you have with people. And now when you're set in a position of leadership, having to lead people who are taught to communicate a different way, when you say we need to go left and everyone's going right, your first instinct is to think, well, something's wrong with them because I was clear. And I often tell my leaders, question yourself first. Question your communication first. If I said, hey, everyone, I want you to go left, the first thing you say is, okay, where could it have been possible that I might have communicated something that was interpreted differently? Communication is such an important thing. I can't tell you the amount of hours I personally have gone through, and I'm sure each and every one of the individuals on this call have gone through, just in learning how to communicate effectively. It is a powerful thing. We talk a little bit about investing in self. I would encourage everyone, whether you get a coach, whether you get a class where you pick up, learn how to communicate effectively. It will change the entire game for you. And Ashley, you actually brought this up. When you were sharing. Even when you learn how to communicate effectively, or you go through classes and you get the learning done, the practice of doing it is very, very unique because you're dealing with so many different types of people. So the curiosity that you mentioned, Ashley, is really, really important. So instead of first trying to communicate, first try to really build connection. It's hard to communicate without connection. And I'll just leave that right there, or else we'll have to go into it.
You said you can get a coach. You said you can join like a community, or you can join, what we're launching, right? In just a few weeks. The link is in the chat. You can click on the link and be a part of a cohort where we will help you develop your communication skills to prepare you for executive level leadership. So I'm just going to put that plug out there.
Perfect plug.
Perfect plug. And there's a whole section just on this because it's that important. And at every level of your leadership, your capabilities to communicate are different. What's needed in your communication is different. Communicating a directive versus communicating vision requires different language. And so it's a really, really big and important part of the training that we're launching. And it's a big thing. It's a big thing. Connect first, then communicate.
I'm gonna jump in here. Ty Gordon put on LinkedIn, learning how to diagnose and flex communication styles. Change my leadership game. And I just got two things to insert really quickly before I throw it to Ben. So one, you mentioned left, Kevin. I think what's really helpful, especially the higher we go in the organization, is understanding this idea of shared language. What did we mean when we said left?
That's right.
So one, as a team, how do we create a shared language that we can all agree on, that all makes sense? And then the second part is understanding behavioral styles and preferences. Understanding, I know when I hop on a call, Seth is going to ask me, hey, how's my week? How am I doing? How are things? I got to have a response to that. I know when I hop on a call with Ben, he's going to kind of ease into the call. He's going to test the waters. I know I hop on a call with Kevin. He's going to ask, did you think about this? Ashley's going to say, okay, so what else are we missing here? Can we get some feedback? So knowing the styles and preferences, I'm not offended then when Ashley asks for clarity, or Kevin says, wait, but have we thought about this? Or Ben doesn't jump into the conversation and go really deep in the beginning, but he'll get there in the middle and the end. And sometimes we miss each other because we don't give space for each other's behavioral preference. And then how do we flex in those? So shared language and then flexing around understanding how each other communicates.
Yeah.
You got to say that again for me, Peter. You said give space. Like give me that phrase one more time. You said give space for preference.
You know how it is when you say something that might have been halfway smart, you instantly forget it.
It was so good. It was so good.
Watch the recording. You have to go back and watch the recording to catch it.
It was so good. It was so good.
One of the things, Kevin, that especially when I facilitate programs, and I'm really excited to be one of the hosts for our Accelerate cohort that's coming up. I recognize that my natural energy is like 14 on a 5-point scale. But I know, okay, in many spaces that I'm in, I can't come in on 14.
Yep.
So I play with that dial a little bit. So you might get sparks and flashes of 14, and I dial it down because I'm responding to. Now, if I'm in a room and they're high energy off the chain doing cartwheels, we're gonna be doing that all day. But that's not the right temperature for every setting, and everyone doesn't respond in that way. And I've learned not to be offended if I'm trying to high five and fist bump and dance around the room, and someone else is like, "Can we just get to the objective?"
Yeah,
because their preference, their style is different. And how do we connect in a way that brings out the best and leverages the best of everyone's style?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add in there would be, I think one of the most challenging things for people who are just leaders who are communicators is just to be able to boil down the idea of what exactly are you saying and what are you meaning. When it comes to just filling space and saying a lot of things, we can do that. But I think being able to take a step back and just ask yourself, what exactly am I saying here? And what am I wanting to communicate here? And even if it's clear to me, is it clear to the person who's on the receiving end? And I think that's really where the rubber meets the road is. It doesn't matter if it's clear to you, if it's not clear to somebody else. And I just go back to Ashley's comment about that curiosity. I think we have to be curious in people's communication styles and how people receive information and how people learn. And I think that's why cohort learning is so valuable, because you see so many different communication styles. And as you learn from each other in a laboratory setting, then you are opening up your toolbox of communication, and you're putting in many different methods and approaches of how you can communicate with clarity to different groups of people. And I think we just have to do better as leaders. I think we can't approach leadership and communication by just saying, well, this is how I say it, or this is how I communicate, or this is just what I do. That's not good enough. It's about really communicating with maximum clarity to the person on the other end so they can receive to the best of their ability what it is that you're wanting to communicate. So, yeah, I just think that curiosity is such a huge approach when it comes to how does everybody else learn? How does my team learn? And just because it makes sense to me doesn't mean it naturally makes sense to other people. And being able to learn in that space. Somebody shared this with me a couple of weeks ago. They said, even when you think about what you share online, your social media, for example, it really is your curiosity on display for the world. That's what social media is. It's what you're interested in, and it's your journey of learning and curiosity that you are inviting the world to come along with you on that ride. And when everybody learns together, everybody rises together.
Yeah. I want to add just the one element that is, I understand that leaders, middle managers, supervisors, directors, and executives for that matter, there is a lot of pressure upon individuals to meet their KPIs, their deadlines, their OKRs, their obligations, objectives. With some of the clients that I work with, they have pressure coming from national leadership, national presidents, regional presidents who are telling them, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z. And the leader feels like, okay, we need to drive performance. What do you say to that leader who feels like they don't have time to slow down, build relationships, build trust, listen, communicate, because they are just caught in the rat race of trying to meet and that's a real thing, right? So what do you say to that leader that says, okay, what y'all are saying, yeah, that sounds good on paper, but in reality, I got a Jack Welch type of leader who I'm reporting to, right? I got a Bezos type of leader who I'm reporting to. I got an Elon Musk type of leader who I'm reporting to. And they don't care about holding hands, warm, fuzzy, psych safety, kumbaya. They want to know, did I get the job done?
Yeah.
What do you say to that leader?
You know, I can, you know, kind of speak to this from experience. It really is a both and. It's a both and approach. It's not something that I think when you drive too much of a separation between meeting objectives and connection, having true meaningful connections with people, when you drive a wedge between those two things as two separate objectives, is where you've already started to fail, in my opinion. It's a both. Like, the objectives absolutely is a reality, and that pressure doesn't exist on one person. It exists on us as a team. And if there's a feeling, and if you can share that feeling with your team member, that this pressure is not something that just belongs to you, it's something that belongs to us, and everyone's driving towards that, it's something you're managing at the same time. When you're leading multifaceted teams, or and at any level of leadership, even if you're Jeff Bezos, I promise you. As a matter of fact, I just heard a talk from Mr. Bezos where he was speaking about the importance of making sure that the reason he can drive the way that he's driving is because the people who are under him directly, they understand that he's connected to those individuals. These aren't people he doesn't have relationships with. He's connected to these individuals. So their preference that Pierre was talking about is already dialed in. It's already connected. Because of their relationship, he has the opportunity to kind of skip the pleasantries. And you know what? Let me rephrase that a little bit. He has the opportunity to be more authentic in the way that he feels about the objectives because of his relationship with those individuals. So, Seth, I think that's a phenomenal question. And I would just encourage leaders to, let's not separate those things. They both are the objective. They both are the objective. You're leading through that relationship. You're leading through those connections, and the pressures, let's just call it what it is. The pressures of meeting metrics, the pressures of objectives are on all of us as a team, which is why synergy, hands down, will be my favorite concept and ideal of all times. It's the GOAT.
And, you know, I'm going to stop us now because we're going to be talking about this even more tomorrow, that multi-level leadership, that enterprise thinking, that how to navigate complexity, how to have that leadership vision. So we'll be talking about that more with our very own Seth Yolorda tomorrow, 7 a.m., talking about the strategic mindset. So it's a great point to end on. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. Again, I want to encourage everyone. First of all, thank you for everybody's time today, for listening in. Gentlemen, thank you for all of your insights, your reflections, you know, all of your shared experience. It's been really, even for me, I'm learning a lot as we've been talking about dropping those gems throughout this morning. So I want to encourage people to check out this cohort, this pre-executive cohort. If you are ready to take your leadership to the next level, you're looking to get into those executive roles, we encourage you, take a look, browse, ask questions, reach out to us, ask us more tomorrow. Or if you are thinking about, again, where am I on the scale of that relational mindset, that reflective mindset, consider taking this very short assessment. It'll take you, again, less than 3 minutes. And other than that, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.